advance for whatever I end up doing tonight. Alright, so, where are you from? It wasn't until the deaf woman was screaming in my face and hitting me and trying to make me drink a big bowl of hot, fat sheep fat, or sorry, hot liquid sheep fat, that I realized I needed to wake up. Life had been trying to wake me up for a long time, I realized, looking back. There have been a lot of signs for a long time. There have been bad investments, bad mating decisions, a brief marriage to a lesbian, a night where in Shanghai, for some reason, under a drunken stupor, I thought it was a better idea to try to fight my way out of a mafia-controlled bar than pay this exorbitant bar fine. And a girl who talked me into watching Sex and the City 2. All these bad decisions I've been collecting for a while, kind of like your crazy aunt collects cats. And now, looking back, I realized when that bowl of hot grease was in my hands, these were signs that I needed to wake up and figure out what life was about. So one summer, a few years ago, my friend Bayer invited me to come see the Nadam Festival in Mongolia. And this seemed like a really good timing for this event because my ex-girlfriend had just called me a few days before and excitedly explained to me that she was getting hormone treatments so she could get pregnant with her husband. And I figured a few weeks driving through the Mongolian countryside was a way better decision than killing myself. So I headed up to Mongolia with my friend Doug and Steve, and we get there, and we arranged this trip to go out to the ancient capital of Karakorum, and then back to Ulaanbaatar. Now, one of the things we didn't realize until we got there is no roads in this country at all. So we piled into this little tiny van, this little sardine can of a van called a Delica, which is the best name ever for a van that you're going to go off-roading in. And we drive up to Karakorum and back. And on the way back, our guide, Erne, had arranged for us to stay with a Mongolian family in a real, actual, live nomads camp. And then, to us, this sounded like a really fun event. Like, as we were pulling into this river valley, this idyllic, beautiful, desolate river valley, and we're getting these visions of bonfire, barbecues, and vodka plum fairies dancing in our heads. But when we get out of the van, we're not greeted by bonfires and booze. We're greeted by this wailing, terrible, spine-tingling, sadly horrible cry from something. And we're looking around, I'm thinking like, we're gonna see Dick Cheney torturing some mutant alien baby with waterboards or something. But there's no neocons or enhanced tortures or anything. It's just this sheep tied to a post. And I grew up in the city. I didn't know that sheep could cry like this. It was just screaming in agony and terror. But all the other animals in the nomad camp were fine. But this one sheep, it just cast this really ominous pale over us as we're ushered into one of the gurs. Now, a gur is a Mongolian word for a yurt, which is a Mongolian word for a round, semi-permanent tent. So we go into this gur, and the matriarch, who I kind of think of as Mrs. Genghis Khan, this is really echoey. Mrs. Genghis Khan, she sits us down on some benches and talks to our guide for a minute, and then gets really excited and fiddles with the battery for the solar array that's sticking outside, and then gets the TV on, and then she turns on the TV and we're watching some really staticky something, and she goes, oh, Korea. And we're looking, we're squinting at the TV, and it's kind of like when you're 10 and you're looking at porn on cable that your parents aren't paying for, all staticky stuff. And yeah, it was right. It was some sort of Korean soap opera. I'm like, okay, great, thanks, Mrs. Khan, that's really nice. And when she realizes that hasn't amused us, she turns it off, and she grabs this bowl from the wall, and she dips it in this gigantic leather pouch, and hands this bowl to my friend Steve. My friend Steve is this big Texas guy, and he takes the bowl and he looks at it for a moment, and he kind of gives our guide this what the heck look. But when a big Texan guy looks at you like that, it's not really what the heck, it's more like, what the fuck? So our guide explains to our friend Doug, who speaks Japanese, which is the only language any of us share at all, that the bowl is full of ayran. Now, that doesn't mean anything to us either, and we kind of figure out through a little bit of difficulty that this is fermented horse milk. And our guide explains to us that when you go to a Mongolian's house, especially a nomad's house, you have they have to offer you this bowl of fermented horse milk, and you have to drink it. Now, a few days before this, we had gone to a monastery where in the 1930s, the communists had killed 1,000 monks by ripping their balls off. And we had kind of realized that when a Mongolian tells us to do something, we do it. So Steve takes this bowl, he looks at it for a moment, he takes a little sip, and Erne, who knew he'd come from Texas, goes, "Cowboy, fighting!" And so Steve goes, "Oh, yippee-ki-yay," and he takes a big drink of it. And Doug and I are looking at him like, okay, is it going to be like a Mikey likes it kind of thing? No. His eyes pop open, he shoves the bowl into Doug's hands, and this like white gooey stuff kind of sloshes over the sides, and Steve runs out of the gur. So then it's just me and Doug and the bowl of milk and Mrs. Khan, because Erne goes up to look after Steve. And Doug looks at the stuff and goes, "I've lived a good life," and he takes a drink of it. But right at the time he finishes his first drink of the stuff, we start hearing these sounds of Steve just vomiting, just retching everywhere. And it sounds like we're like in Jongno on a Saturday night or something. And it's like retching and retching. Like we hadn't eaten anything in hours, and he is throwing up stuff that did not even exist in his stomach before. And he goes, "I better check on Steve." Like, so he leaves me with the bowl of stuff. So I'm looking, this is my first good look at the Iraq, this fermented horse milk. And just as Doug is about to go out of the tent, he looks back and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, it kind of tastes like fermented semen." Like, oh, that's charming. I'm really looking for this now. And he's available for dinner parties and speaking engagements if you want, so just contact me for details and I'll let you know. So I got this bowl, and it's full, it's white, it's kind of an off-white milky stuff with curds in it, and a few hairs. And I'm thinking at first, okay, I hope these aren't horse hairs. And I think, oh my God, I hope they are horse hairs. So I say a little prayer to a God I haven't believed in since college, and I drink the stuff. And I'm trying to think, okay, I'm just one-shotting some makgeolli, it's not going to be that bad, whatever. I get it down, and it's fine, it's not good, it is bad. I don't know what fermented semen tastes like, but maybe it's pretty similar. This goes on, I'm done, we go outside, and then the fun starts. We help, for the next few hours, we help kill the sheep, we help them make blood sausage, we do all this stuff that's just not what a city boy has ever done in his life, and we're all pretty much lost our appetites. But it does take a while for the sheep to cook, and by the time it's finished, we are pretty hungry, so we all kind of go into one of the gurs, which we'll be sleeping in, and which, by the way, they have hung most of the sheep up in. The dead sheep carcass is hanging pretty close to the beds that we're going to be sleeping on that night. We're sitting there, the rest of the Mongolian nomads come in, they bring in a gigantic platter with the rest of the cooked sheep, and you know, the blood sausage, we eat enough to be polite. Now this is not your halmoni sundae. This is the real deal. This is actual blood and actual intestine skin that, if you've ever had like sangji heijengu, this is it. This is the real stuff, and it's not good. We eat enough to be polite. We eat some of the organs, which range from horrendous to okay. But then the sheep is pretty good. Now, I hope no one's vegetarian or vegan here, but the sheep is actually pretty delicious. And we're eating a little bit of that. And then this woman comes in, and she's got this bowl, another bowl. And I've learned now that Mongolians bearing bowls run away. Just be careful, just get away. You don't want to be around them. She's got this bowl, and she comes to us. Now, the Mongolians we had been encountering out in the countryside are kind of stocky, sturdy, healthy, happy, ruddy-looking people. And this lady is not like that. She's skinny, she's gangly, she's pale. If we were back in Ulaanbaatar or another city, she wouldn't have been remarkable. But here, she just kind of looks sickly and malnourished. Now she comes up to us with this bowl, and we look in, and it looks like it's a bowl full of grease. And she's kind of like moaning to us, and this woman we figure out is deaf. She doesn't speak, she doesn't hear, but she kind of makes noises at us, and she stomps on the ground and communicates by hitting people. And so she puts the bowl down and starts motioning towards us and stomping and moaning, and she hits Steve and she hits Doug and she hits me in the shoulders, and then she starts pantomiming, like dipping. Like, all right, fine, whatever. We'll dip the meat in the grease. We do this. It doesn't add or subtract anything from the sheep. We do this and this seems to make her happy for a couple minutes. But then, like, she kind of gets annoyed suddenly, and she starts stomping on the ground and moaning some more. And she picks up the bowl and kind of motions it to Steve, who, for whatever reason, is always the first person to have to do something here. And she makes like a motion to drink. And Steve gives her kind of like another, what the fuck look, like we're gonna drink a bowl of grease. And this makes her really angry. She moans some more, she stomps on the ground, and she just whacks me in the shoulder really hard. Like, she could put one of these Mongolian wrestlers to shame with how fast and hard she hits people. And so, I don't know why she hit me and not Steve, who was actually giving her the look, but whatever. So she does this a few times, she looks at me and she kind of like starts moaning loudly and screaming in my face and stomping her feet and making this motion for drinking the grease. And I'm like, what? Why would I drink grease? And then she does some other pantomimes that are much lower down, and I'm reminded again of the whole ball ripping off, killing the Hmong story. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever, I'm doing it. I grab the bowl from Steve, and I take a drink of the grease. It's hot, fresh from the sheep grease. I drink a couple of drinks, it sears my throat, and it's dripping down, and I'm thinking, what the fuck am I doing here? How did I get here? And then something clicks. Something happens in my soul, my brain, whatever. And all these things have been happening to me for the last several years, since before I left the USA, even before I fled whatever problems I was avoiding there, and came to Korea and avoided whatever problems I created here, things started clicking, and I realized that I had been drifting through life. I had been asleep at the wheel, and just all these things have been happening, and I hadn't been processing them. And with my ex-girlfriend trying to get pregnant, I realized that I was going to have to do something. I wasn't going to let life, I could no longer just let life push me around. And like this deaf woman was with the grease, I had to take control of my life. And like all the things that happened the rest of the trip, and when I got back, like we drank vodka with these like pre-adolescent kids for the rest of the night, and Doug made this game up where he's saying, I win, motherfucker, I win! And all these other things, but the only thing I could think of the rest of the trip was drinking this grease, and how I had been so asleep and so unpresent in my own life. And so, all I can say to you is, like, if a Mongolian offers you a bowl of something to drink, maybe you should drink it, because you don't know what's going to happen afterwards. Thanks.